The next morning, sunlight filtered through the gaps in the curtains, falling upon her shoulder. Hai lay still, taking a few seconds to realize where she was. Her body felt heavy, as if she had just passed through a dream that was too real. She turned over, touching his chest. Memories of last night flooded back, not clear in every detail, but enough to make her face flush. A sensation both strange and unnameable. Previously, Luong Tuan, the son of a wealthy family, was determined to wait for a 15-year-old girl and refused to marry, leading his parents to suspect his orientation. After tricking the stepmother to bring Hai to the grand villa, they began calculating a wedding. This love trap was not easy right before her 18th birthday. I am the narrator, Sam. Author Nguyen My invites you to watch the continuation. Hai quickly turned away, pulling the covers up. She didn't dare look directly at him. Just the sound of his breathing made her heart skip a beat. He woke up not long after. Without saying much, he simply reached out to gently stroke her hair and placed a very light kiss on her forehead. Sleep a little longer. His voice was deep, so normal it was as if nothing had ever happened. That exactly made Hai feel even more uneasy. In the days that followed, everything changed in a way that was very hard to name. No one mentioned that night, but the distance between them vanished. Touches became more natural, glances were no longer avoided, and Hai realized, what confused her wasn't what had happened, but the feeling that she was starting to get used to his presence. On Hai's 18th birthday, a small cake, a simple meal, a very ordinary wish, she stood there, suddenly wanting to cry. In 18 years, this was the first time she'd truly felt remembered. That night, she went to sleep early. Near midnight, he returned. No noise, no waking her. He just lay down beside her, pulling her into his arms like a long-standing habit. Hai woke up in a daze. When did you get back, uncle? Just now. He sat up and took out a small ring. It wasn't flashy or elaborate, just a very simple stone, but it shimmered under the faint light. He took her hand and put it on. Happy birthday. He paused for a moment. Will you be my wife? Hai looked down at her hand. The ring sat there, small, but heavy. She didn't answer immediately. She only felt something rising very slowly within her heart. It wasn't clear happiness. It wasn't exactly fear either. It was the feeling of standing between two sides, one being her familiar life, and the other something new, yet uncertain. She let out a soft laugh, trying to lighten the heavy atmosphere. You're old, uncle, and I'm still young. He frowned, looking at her a little longer. Old where? Hai didn't answer. She only turned away, but the corners of her lips couldn't hide a smile. From that day on, everything continued to flow. No one forced anyone. No one made grand promises. They just began to grow used to having each other in their lives. In a very natural way. Very slowly. As if this story had started a long time ago, and only now was it being named. Hai was just over 18, and her body had clearly blossomed. She wasn't the fragile type of girl easily overlooked, yet that man still let out half-joking, half-serious remarks that made her face burn. Try saying that one more time, uncle. Hai's voice was small but tense. Tuan faltered. The smile on his lips stiffened for a beat. He understood there were boundaries that, if crossed, would no longer be a joke. I was just kidding. Hai turned her face away, but her ears were still red. Within her heart was something very strange, not exactly anger, but like being poked at a weak spot she hadn't yet named. The tension was high when Hai suddenly remembered something. She hurriedly held up a test strip, her voice trembling. Stop, it seems I'm pregnant. Those words fell very lightly, but they were enough to make everything stand still. Tuan couldn't believe his ears. He bolted upright, his gaze showing clear confusion for the first time. Really? Hai didn't answer. She just shoved the test strip into his hand. 2 red lines. Clear, unmistakable. He stared for a few seconds, then laughed. Not a triumphant laugh, but something that was both a relief and an acceptance. So, you can't run away anymore. His voice softened. Hearing that, Hai didn't know whether to be angry or amused. Did you trap me, uncle? He didn't deny it. He only looked at her longer than usual. That night, Hai lay with her back to him, eyes wide open. She began to think more. About him. About herself. About the way everything had happened so fast that she hadn't yet fully understood it. A thought flashed through her mind. Had he seen this coming from the very beginning? A chill ran along her spine. It wasn't exactly fear. It was just that things were no longer simple. The next morning, he took her for a checkup. The waiting room was crowded. Hai sat in silence, her hands ice cold. She wasn't afraid of pain. She was afraid of the result. Tuan sat beside her, not saying much. He only held her hand. "Don't worry, I'm here." A very ordinary sentence. But for some reason, Hai felt a lump form in her throat. She turned to look at him. His gaze at that moment lacked his usual teasing or indifferent air. He was just a man trying to stand firm, for both of them. He leaned down and kissed her forehead gently, amidst all the eyes surrounding them. That moment, Hai remembered for a long time. The result? About 7 weeks. Everything was fine. Tuan held the paper, looking at it over and over as if afraid he'd misread it. "So, it's real." He spoke very softly. Hai stood beside him, silent. She only felt a space open up inside her. Not entirely happy. Not entirely sad. Just life turning in a different direction. Faster than she had imagined. The wedding was prepared in haste. Not excessively grand, but enough for anyone looking on to see he was serious. On the day she put on her wedding dress, Hai stood before the mirror. She looked at herself. It was still her. But no longer the girl of a few months ago. A girl who once thought she was just passing through someone else's life, now stood here. Becoming the center of a story she didn't yet fully comprehend. At the altar, her father took her hand and placed it in his. "My little girl, I entrust her to you." The voice of a man grown old from things he hadn't quite fulfilled. Tuan nodded. "I promise." Just 2 words. But Hai felt it. He was telling the truth. At least in that moment. Life afterward returned to normal. A new kind of normal. Hai was pregnant. He stayed home more. He went to work less. Sometimes she saw him sitting for a long time just watching her eat. As if he were learning how to become someone else. A husband. A father. The 5th month. The two went for an ultrasound. The doctor smiled. "The fetus is healthy. 20 weeks. Tuan asked immediately. "Who does it look like?" The doctor pointed at the screen. "Looks like the father." He was silent for a few seconds. Then he sighed. "Why isn't it a girl?" Hai let out a laugh. A rare moment where she laughed so freely. On the way back, she was still laughing. And he pretended to be grumpy. "I like girls." "Like me?" "Yeah." "Then what if it's a boy who looks like you?" "Uncle?" He glanced at her. "Stop calling me uncle." Hai didn't answer. She only turned her face toward the window. But the corners of her mouth curled up. That night, lying beside each other, he hugged her from behind, his hand resting on her belly. Very gently. "I'm sorry." Hai faltered slightly. "For what?" "For dragging you into my life, so fast." There was no immediate answer. Only the breathing of 2 people, touching each other in the darkness. A moment later, Hai whispered, "I don't know yet." It wasn't a refusal. It wasn't an acceptance either. It was just not knowing yet. The story doesn't stop here. It's just, from that moment on, both understood. They were no longer standing on opposite sides. There are things, once they cross the original boundaries, everything becomes difficult to name. Hai thinks this sometimes. Not with regret. Just that everything happened faster than she imagined. And him, still naturally. Almost stubbornly bold. Narcissistic. Yes. But not the kind that makes people entirely uncomfortable, rather. Something caught between arrogance and a sincerity that is hard to hide. When night falls, there are moments of absolute stillness. So still that Hai can clearly hear her own heartbeat. And she realizes it starts to skip every time he draws near. 7 months pregnant. Her belly has rounded significantly. Walking is no longer as effortless as before. Hai goes out less, spending most of her time at home, watching movies, snacking, or simply sitting in silence. Hand on her stomach, feeling every small movement within. That afternoon, as she sat on the sofa, Aunt Can approached. "Have you been tired lately?" Hai shook her head with a light smile. "I'm fine, Auntie." Auntie sat down beside her. But this time was different. Her gaze seemed too heavy, sinking slightly. "When you give birth, I probably won't be here." Hai froze. "Where are you going?" A short silence followed. "The old man is weak now. I have to go back." Auntie's voice lowered, as if speaking too loud would break something fragile. Hai didn't ask more right away. She just quietly placed her hand on her belly. She understood that feeling, the feeling of having to choose between the people you cannot leave behind. "Go back, Auntie." Hai spoke very softly. Being by his side, right now, is what matters most. Auntie looked at her, eyes beginning to redden. Hai took her hand, her voice steady. "He has been with you his whole life. These final days, you should be with him." A momentary hesitation. "I'll be fine here." Those words were not meant to reassure someone else. They were, more like she was talking to herself. A few minutes later, Hai stood up and went upstairs. When she returned, she held a bag. She placed it in Auntie's hands. "Take this." Auntie opened it and gasped. Neatly stacked piles of cash lay inside. "I can't, it's too much." Hai shook her head. "It's not much." She spoke slowly. "I just want you to worry less." Her eyes were calm then. Not out of grand generosity, but like someone who is used to fending for herself, now simply sharing a part of what she has. Auntie Can was moved to tears, unable to speak. After a while, she let out a soft laugh. "So you called him husband today, did you?" Hai's face flushed as she turned away. "In front of him, I still call him uncle." Auntie laughed, shaking her head. "You tease him too much. Careful, or he might actually get sad." Hai pouted. "If he gets sad?" She paused, thought for a moment, and continued. "He looks just like a child." Auntie stopped laughing. She looked at Hai and said slowly, "Tuan, he has been lonely for a long time." Hai remained silent. 37 years, he lacked nothing. Except someone who was sincere. Those words fell softly. But they were enough to make Hai stumble in her thoughts. "From the very beginning, he never saw you as someone just passing through." Auntie continued, her voice uncertain but clear enough for Hai to hear. "There are things he chose long ago." Hai didn't react immediately. She only felt something deep within her shift slightly. That night, Hai lay still, her eyes open. She recalled every small detail. His gaze, the way he looked at her, was not what she had once thought. A fleeting question. In the end, did I walk into his life? Or was he already standing there, waiting for me to arrive? Outside the room, familiar footsteps echoed. He was home. Not loud. Just like any other day. But for some reason, today Hai felt her heartbeat a rhythm slower. No longer the feeling of being dragged along, but as if she was starting to walk toward him on her own. Hai's expression clouded over. For the first time, she was truly thinking about him seriously. Before now, she had always kept a distance, not close, yet not quite far, like a traveler passing through his life, staying because of circumstances rather than choice. She had never fully trusted him. She is afraid. Afraid that one day, when he grows bored, he will let go, like someone discarding something that no longer holds value. She is poor. Coming to him, she brought a past that wasn't beautiful, a debt, and a position that was never equal. A person like her, what does she have to rely on to believe she can hold on to something called forever? "Do you love him?" Aunt Can's question was very soft. But it made Hai freeze. She remained silent. For a long time. I don't know." The answer was so honest that even she was surprised. "Then do you hate him?" Hai shook her head immediately. Without a second thought. Auntie looked at her, a faint smile on her lips. "Then that is enough." Hai looked up. "Enough, how?" "If you don't hate him, then there is room for love to grow." The words weren't loud. But they fell, very deep. Hai suddenly remembered that night. Not the details. Just the feeling. She had never felt regret. Never felt hatred. It was just that, she didn't fully understand. Something in her heart seemed to untangle. Not with a clamor. Just, she naturally felt lighter. She let out a laugh. A very small kind of laugh. I think I do like him. Antkin looked at her. Her eyes softening. Yes. That afternoon, when seeing Auntie off, Hai stood at the door for a long time. The wind blew past. Her belly moved slightly. She placed her hand there, stroking gently. For the first time, she no longer thought of herself as being dragged into this life. It was more like she was walking in on her own. Night. Tuan returned home. There was a sound in the kitchen. Hai walked down. She saw him standing with his back turned, wearing an apron, clumsily fumbling with a few dishes. She stood still for a few seconds. Did not call out. Did not speak. Just watched. A man who once made her stay on guard was now standing there, struggling over a meal. Without knowing when, the distance in her heart had shortened. Hai stepped forward, embraced him from behind, very gently. Is it hot, husband? Tuan froze. His entire body seemed to go still. He whipped around. What did you just call me? Hai looked at him. Her eyes curved slightly. She didn't look away. Husband. A very small word, but enough to change the look in his eyes. He smiled, unable to hide it. So, you've agreed? Hai gave his shoulder a light swat. Don't start imagining things. A pause. It's only, like, for now. Dinner that night was nothing special. Just 2 savory dishes, a bowl of soup. But Hai ate more slowly. Not because it tasted better, but because the feeling was different. Tuan sat beside her, a bit embarrassed. I'm not used to cooking yet. It's okay. Hai placed a piece of food in his bowl. You are my husband, you don't always have to be so careful. He looked at her. Said nothing. Only nodded very gently. Night. The two of them lay beside each other. He held her from behind. Not a tight squeeze. Just being there. I will try to be better. His voice was deep. So I don't stay too far from you. Hai did not turn around. She only spoke softly. Don't try too hard. A breath. I'm not running away yet. He laughed softly. Pressed his forehead against her shoulder. Said nothing more. A moment later. Wife. What? Could you stop calling me uncle? Hai was silent for a few seconds. Then spoke very quietly. Depends on my mood. In the darkness, Tuan sighed. But he was still smiling. That night, nothing special happened. Only the distance between the two of them drew a little closer. Very slowly. But enough to notice. What is there left to check? Hai tightened her grip, her body warming up, sweat beads forming along her spine. If you say one more word, you're sleeping on the sofa. Tuan let out a soft laugh, his voice still in that half-joking, half-serious tone. The sofa is cold. Would you really let your husband out there in the wind? Hai gritted her teeth. You really are, beyond help. In the darkness, the space seemed to shrink. Hai lay still, her hand still clutching the hem of her shirt, not daring to move. She could feel him very close. Too close. It wasn't the confusion of before. But a different feeling, harder to name. I'm just teasing you. Tuan's voice dropped, almost a whisper in her ear. My wife is the best. Hai paused for a moment. She didn't argue. Nor did she react as she usually would. She only let out a soft breath. A thought flashed through her mind. If this had been a few months ago, she surely would have been angry. But now, she remained silent. After a while, unable to take it anymore, Hai gently pushed his hand away. That's enough. Tuan still feigned innocence. I'm not doing anything. Can you just sleep quietly? I'm not used to it. Then go sleep outside. Not going. Hai closed her eyes. She knew, talking further was useless. The mouth on this man, she could never win. Silence for a moment. Tuan's voice suddenly changed. No longer joking. Hi, I have something to tell you. She opened her eyes, turned toward him. What is it? His gaze now was not like every day. Not cold. Not mocking. But very peaceful. After I'm done, you can ask whatever you want. Hi nodded slightly. Rested her head against his chest. I'm planning to hand over the company. The first sentence made her freeze. For Quan to manage. He spoke slowly, clear on every word. I don't want our child to grow up without a father. The space went silent. Only the sound of steady breathing remained. I have enough. Money, assets, enough so that you and the child won't have to worry. I don't need more. His voice was very calm. As if he had thought about this for a very long time. I want to stay home. Take you to your checkups. Wait for the baby to be born. Take the child to school, pick them up. A pause. Things I never had. Hai said nothing. Only listened. But in her heart, something began to stir. I've arranged everything. The house, for your father. Auntie's matters, I've handled them too. I don't want our child later to grow up in complicated things. His voice remained steady. Not forcing. Just recounting what he had done. From now on, I'm no longer the chairman. He laughed softly. Just your husband. Those words were so simple. But they made Hai's throat tighten. Do you have any thoughts on that? He asked. Very softly. Hai remained silent for a few seconds. Then shook her head. No. She wrapped her arms around him. Proactively. What you're doing, it's good. My father has a place to stay. I can be at peace now. As for the other things. She paused. I understand. Tuan said nothing. He only held her tighter. After a while, Hai felt his shoulders trembling slightly. She looked up. Saw his eyes were red. What's wrong? He smiled. But a tear fell. I just feel lucky. Lucky that you understand me. Hai reached out to wipe it away. Without a word. Will you entrust yourself to me? His voice lowered. I don't make grand promises. Only that, I will never let you cry. Hai looked at him. For a long time. For the first time, she looked at him without caution. Instead, it was something softer. I'm not sure yet if it's love. She spoke truthfully. But, I'm not afraid of you anymore. A very light sentence. But enough. Hai rested her forehead against his chest. Listening to his heartbeat. Slow. Steady. She realized then. She was beginning to feel a tremor of emotion. Not because of the words he said. But because of the way he chose to stay. Outside, the night was very still. And in that small room, there were two people, for the first time, truly standing on the same side. Hai, you only need to smile. His voice deepened, slowing down. Leave the rest to me. Hai said nothing. She only felt her heart soften a bit. You've suffered enough. The rest, I want to do it. He held her tighter, as if afraid that letting go would make her vanish. I can be your husband, your friend, the one by your side whenever you need. A pause. Just trust me a little. The space went silent. Only the sound of breathing remained. Hai looked up. His gaze now held nothing but sincerity. She didn't say, I agree. But her arms tightened slightly around him. The kiss came very gently. Not rushed. Not breathless. Just touching, as if to confirm that they were both on the same side. The outside was quiet. Inside, something was becoming clearer. Hai's belly moved slightly. A very light kick. She laughed, placing her hand over it. The baby is restless again. Tuan immediately leaned down, pressing his hand against her belly. Want to come out early? Huh? His voice was teasing, but his eyes were completely tender. Wait a little longer, then Daddy will take you out to play. Hai looked at him and laughed. Like a child. The two of them lay back down. They didn't speak for a while. Then he spoke. You know? You are beautiful. Hai slightly furrowed her brows. There you go again. I'm serious. He looked at her, deeply sincere. I can give you everything, as long as you give me just a bit of affection. Hai fell silent. Those words were not the first time she had heard them. But today, they were different. I don't need much. Just, don't leave. Hai turned to look at him. Do you think I'm that quick to run? He smiled. I don't know. But I'm still afraid. A short silence. Hai exhaled softly. I don't know yet if this is love. But, I don't want to leave. That answer was incomplete. But it was enough. He embraced her. Not squeezing. Just holding. I've thought about it a lot. His voice dropped lower. I once did some very terrible things. Hai glanced at him. I know. He laughed, slightly embarrassed. Yeah, knowing is good. But back then. He paused for a moment. I only thought, if I didn't keep you, I would lose you. Hai didn't react immediately. She understood. But she didn't entirely agree. You were a bit selfish. She spoke directly. Yeah. He didn't deny it. But now. He looked at her. I want to keep you in a different way. Hai looked at him. Longer than usual. I am right here. She said quietly. He smiled. Closed his eyes. A moment later. Wife. What now? Can you stop being so cold to me? Hai turned her face away. Depends. He sighed. But he was still smiling. That night. Nothing more exceeded the boundaries. It was just two people lying closer to one another. And for the first time, Hai no longer felt she was being held back. Instead, she was staying by choice. Hai looked at him, and suddenly felt a surge of tenderness. Not pity. But that kind of feeling, softening when looking at a man who was once strong. Now clumsy around her. She pretended to be oblivious. Letting him fuss. Letting him dote on her. Her belly grew larger by the day. Fortunately, it wasn't too heavy, though every step had slowed. That day, her father and little An came to visit. Tuan went to the market. Only the three of them were in the house. Father and daughter sat watching a movie, chatting about random things. After a while, her father turned to look at Hai. How have the two of you been lately? Hai smiled lightly. Same as always, Dad. He looked at her longer. Does Tuan love you? A very simple question. But Hai didn't answer right away. I don't blame you for the past, Dad, for not stopping me. She spoke slowly. It's because of that I have the life I do now. A pause. As for the future, I don't know. But for now, I am fine. Her father said nothing more. He only nodded. But his gaze was still laced with worry. Close to noon. Tuan still hadn't returned. Mr. Kwong looked at his watch, beginning to grow restless. Should I cook something for you first? Hai shook her head. But her eyes had glanced toward the door a few more times. Finally, she said, Go home first, Dad, I'll wait for him. He still wasn't at ease. He reminded her repeatedly. You're close to giving birth, call me immediately if anything happens. Yes, Dad. The door closed. The house grew quieter. Hai stood there for a moment, then let out a soft breath. Her father was still the same. Still worrying for her. It's just that, he didn't fully believe yet. Perhaps because of everything that had passed. Half a month before the due date, they moved into an apartment. The house was smaller. But warmer. Hai lay on the sofa, hand resting on her belly. Sometimes, she felt like everything was a dream. From a contract? To a home. Tuan, I'm hungry. Almost done. Hurry up, the baby is kicking. He laughed from the kitchen. He's not even out yet and he already knows how to demand food. A simple dinner. The two of them sat side by side, watching a movie. Hai rested her head on his shoulder, suddenly asking, if someone offered a high price to trade for you, should I do it? Tuan didn't answer right away. He only tilted his head, whispering in her ear, Is there enough in your bank account yet? Hai burst out laughing. I won't trade. He looked at her. His gaze seemed to lighten. You made the right choice. He carried her into the room, placed her on the bed, then quietly massaged her feet. It's time. Hai looked at him. Smiled. Do a good job, and there's a reward. What reward? Let's see your attitude first. Small things like that, repeated every day. Not loud, but enough to draw them closer together. The age gap was no longer as stark as it once was. 7 days left until the due date. Mrs. T called. Her voice was full of anxiety. I want to come back, but he won't let me. Hai sighed softly. In her mind, the image of her stubborn husband appeared. Don't worry, Mom, having Tuan here is enough. But I'm still worried. Hai's voice softened. You can come back later, it's fine. She hung up. She stood up, walking slowly around the house. Walking, and thinking. It was only now that she understood. There are some who love, in a very extreme way. The door opened. Tuan walked in, hands full of bags. Seeing her walking around, he started. Why aren't you sitting still? I'm walking to make the birth easier. He frowned. Who said that? I read it online. She opened her phone, showing it to him. He looked at it intently. Then he nodded, half believing, half doubting. Then, I'll walk with you. He helped her sit down. Where did you just go? Buying things for the baby. Hai looked at the bags, then looked at him. You bought a bit too much. Tuan said calmly. I feel like it's still not enough. Hai burst out laughing. Are you planning to raise the child until they're 1 year old all at once? Yes. You're wasting too much money. It doesn't matter. He looked at her. Now that I have a wife, a little wasting is fine. Hai shook her head. But she couldn't hide her smile. She realized then. The thing that made her stay was not the money. Nor was it the responsibility. But rather, the way this man was always trying to make her life simpler. That night was not peaceful. Not because of intense pain, but because inside her, it felt as if someone was knocking on a door, beat by beat. Rhythm by rhythm. Hai lay still. Eyes open in the darkness. Tuan, from behind, was still holding her. His breathing was steady, but his hand remained on her belly. As if afraid that letting go meant losing everything. A moment later, Hai furrowed her brows. It wasn't like the previous times. This wave was different. Smoldering, then tightening. She drew in a breath. Her hand unconsciously clutched the blanket tight. Tuan. Not loud, but enough. He sat up almost instantly. Not with a start, but as if he had been waiting. Is it hurting? Hai didn't have time to answer. A warm stream flowed out. She looked down. Tuan. This time, her voice trembled. I think it's time. No more laughing and joking. No more teasing about the old husband. Tuan stood up. Fast, but not chaotic. One hand supported her. The other reached for the bag prepared days ago. Documents. Clothes. Everything, so organized it was as if it had been rehearsed many times. Hai leaned on him. As they passed through the door, she suddenly gripped his hand tighter. Said nothing. Just gripped. Tuan looked down. I'm here. Just one sentence. Not long. Not flowery. But enough for her to take the next step. Down at the car. He opened the door, helped her inside. Closed the door. Circled to the driver's seat. Ignited. No music. No further words. Only the sound of the engine. And the breathing of two people. In the middle of the night. The streets were empty. Yellow street lights stretched into long streaks. Hai rested her head against the seat. Eyes closed. Another wave came. She squeezed her hand shut. Did not cry out. Only spoke softly. Tuan. He didn't turn toward her. He only reached his hand over, and took hers. I'm here. The car sped away. Not too fast. But not slow. It was as if he was trying to keep everything. Just enough. Somewhere in the middle of that road. Neither of them said it. But they both knew. This was no longer a contract. No longer a debt settlement. It wasn't even an arrangement anymore. Just a family. Moving toward a moment that neither of them had ever truly prepared for. The car raced through the night. Hai was in pain. She could no longer hold it back. Tuan, it hurts? Her voice broke. He gripped the steering wheel, his other hand clutching hers tightly. I'm here, we're almost there, be good. Just bear it a little longer. But the more he spoke, the more frustrated she became. Shut up, if you say another word, I'll hit you right now. Another wave of pain crashed over her. She arched her back. This is killing me. Tuan panicked. I'm sorry, it's all my fault. She turned to him, her eyes red and watery. Exactly, it's all your fault. The car kept moving. No more arguing. Only heavy breathing and waves of pain, one after another. Arriving at the hospital, everything became a blur. Signing papers. Supporting her. Running back and forth. Hai lay there, sweat drenching her forehead. 2 centimeters dilated. Then 3. Time stretched, as if it had no end. One day. One night. Tuan did not leave. He had only one task. Wiping her sweat. Massaging her back. Letting her lean on him. He didn't speak much anymore. He was just there. When she reached 4 centimeters. She was taken into the delivery room. White lights. The scent of medicine. The cold air. Hai began to tremble. This time, she truly cried. Not just because of the pain, but because of fear. Tuan stood by her side, holding her hand. I'm here. That was all. The pain came. Sharp. Heavy. Relentless. Hai screamed. It hurts, Tuan, it hurts? Then she turned to him, tears streaming down her face. I hate you, it's all your fault? He nodded. Yeah, it's me, I was wrong. I want to kill you. Yeah, after the birth. I'll let you hit me. The doctor standing nearby burst out laughing. You weren't complaining when you were enjoying it, why so loud now? Tuan stood frozen, embarrassed to the point of turning red. He leaned down and whispered. Don't scream anymore, the doctor is laughing. Hai glared. Shut up. Push. Again. Hai gritted her teeth, gripping his hand so hard it shook. Once. Then once more. A cry broke out. Small. But clear. The entire room seemed to stop for a second. Hai let go. Tears fell. It was no longer pain. It was lightness. It was emptiness. It was over. Tuan stood there, looking at the baby. Then at her. His eyes were red. He said nothing. He only leaned down and kissed her forehead. Later. The hospital room. Quieter. Only the two of them, and a little one. Tuan held the baby, smiling like he had never smiled before. Looks like you. Hai gave a weak glance. Looks like you. More likely. He laughed. Didn't argue. That night. The baby cried. Hai was flustered. He turned his face away. You breastfeed him? She frowned. Turn away. I'm not looking. Turn. He actually turned. But his ears were still red. The days after. Exhaustion. Confusion. Lack of sleep. The milk hadn't come in yet. Tuan started with his half-joking, half-serious style again. Maybe just give him formula. Hai glanced. Then what about my milk? He smiled nonchalantly. I'll handle it for you. She threw a pillow. Get out. A house of 3. But there is one person who is always like a child. Jealous of the baby. Sulking at his wife. Then embracing both, as if afraid of losing them. The month of postpartum recovery. The roles in the house seemed to shift. Tuan almost turned into a different person. Boiling water in the morning. Cooking lunch. Holding the baby in the afternoon. At night, busily massaging both mother and child. At first, Hai found it funny. Where did you learn all this? He didn't look up, still mixing the water as he spoke. Google doesn't charge a fee. She let out a laugh. From that moment on, she didn't ask again. A month passed quickly. So quickly that Hai only just managed to notice. In his hair, there were a few more silver strands. Not many. but enough to see. She looked, then stayed silent. She didn't say a word. Only, from that day on, she teased him about being an old uncle less often. The boy was named Hai Duong, a name that sounded like waves. And it was true. He was the thing that tethered them together. 4 months later, the house began to have a different kind of laughter. No longer the exhaustion of sleepless nights, but random stories, without a beginning or an end. Tuan remained the same. Still that mix of serious and unable to stay decent for more than 5 minutes. Are you recovered yet? No. Then, tonight? No. He stayed quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then started mumbling again. I'm about to wither away from longing. Hai glanced at him. If you say another word, you're sleeping on the sofa. He went silent instantly. But his face slumped like a child's. There are things that don't need to be said. But both of them understood. After giving birth, everything was no longer as it was. Not because the love had died, but because the body was tired, and the mind was cluttered. Yet it was exactly then that people began to learn how to stay. One evening, the baby fell asleep early. The house was quiet. A rarity. Hai sat still for a while, then turned to look at him. She didn't speak. She just looked. Tuan understood. He didn't ask. He only reached out and took her hand. Gently. Not rushing. No more of the loud, teasing games of before. No more demands. Just the two of them lying beside each other. Closer. Slower. And more real. Afterward, they lay in silence, breathing still a bit heavy. But neither said a word. A while later, Tuan asked softly, "Are you tired?" Hai closed her eyes. "Yes, but it's okay." He didn't say more. He only pulled her a little closer. The next morning, everything returned to normal. The baby crying. Milk. Diapers. Food. Tuan was still running back and forth. But occasionally, he would look at her. A look that was no longer a joke. In the evening, the couple sat watching TV. Hai spoke while eating. "The male lead is really handsome." Tuan glanced over. "He's just average. Not as handsome as you?" He nodded. "Yeah." Hai burst out laughing. "You really are narcissistic." He shrugged. "You're only just realizing that?" Life went on like that. Not perfect. Not loud. But one thing became increasingly clear. That both were truly staying with each other. Not because of a contract. Not because of the child. But because they had grown used to having the other by their side. Hai pulled the blanket over herself, her voice annoyed yet carrying a hint of softening. "What are you doing again? Get down, quickly." Tuan laughed. That familiar laugh, both stubborn and doting. He didn't get down. Instead, he leaned closer, his warm breath fanning against her neck. "I'm just looking at my wife. It's been months since we've been this close." Hai closed her eyes, gritting her teeth. "Close? What do you mean close? You really don't know how to get tired." He didn't answer, only held her a little tighter, as if afraid that letting go meant losing her. That kind of embrace was no longer like teasing. Slower, heavier. "I really missed you." A very small sentence, but enough to make Hai open her eyes. She looked at him. This time, she didn't look away. The man who was always joking, always talking nonsense, always making her go crazy, was now looking at her with total sincerity. No trace of a joke. No nonchalant air. Only a bit of exhaustion. A bit of fear. And a lot of love. Hai exhaled softly, her hand resting on his shoulder. "You are always like this." "Like what?" "Able to make people stop being angry." Tuan laughed, lighter this time. He leaned down, kissing her forehead without haste. "Then that's good. I'm not good at much, just good at comforting my wife." Hai said nothing more. Outside the window, the morning light filtered in, very thin. In the room, two people lay close to each other, in silence. No more noise. No more bickering back and forth. Only, the feeling of familiarity. The feeling that Hai used to be afraid of. The fear of being left behind. The fear of not being able to hold on. Now it lay right there. Right in the arms of the person she once did not trust. Hai bit her lip, her voice dropping lower. I've said it again, go back to sleep. Tuan burst out laughing, the kind of laugh that knew no fear. Please, spare me, what else do you want? Just my wife. If you want that, go try it on your own, you're as strong as an ox anyway. Yeah, thanks for the compliment, wife. Strong, my foot. Ellipsis. In the end, it was the same. Hai lost. Not because she was weak, but because she was used to it. After the long journey, life returned to normal in its own very specific way. Hai opened a spa. Tuan stayed at home. The man who once stood over countless meetings now stood in the kitchen. The man who once signed billion-dollar contracts now tied the child's hair and picked the child up from school. Everything switched places, but it fit perfectly. That afternoon, Hai opened the door. The scent of food wafted out. Warm. What are you cooking, Dad? Tuan turned his head, his hands still clearing the table. You're home right at dinner time and you're still asking. He ruffled the boy's hair. Did you have fun playing? Yes, but I missed you and Mom. Hai. Tuan froze for a beat. Then leaned down to kiss the child. Next time, Daddy will take you along. Okay? Yes. Evening. The three of them walked along the street. Lights shining, voices of people, a gentle breeze. A very normal family. But Hai knew. She never thought there would be a day like this. Arriving home. The child asleep. The room quiet. Hai changed her dress, her back turned to the mirror. Hands from behind embraced her. Can you change into something else? No. I'm jealous. What are you jealous of? I don't like other people looking at you like that. Hai sighed. Still that personality. Possessive. But it didn't make her feel suffocated. In the end, she changed anyway. Not because of fear, but because of understanding. Night. The two of them lay beside each other. For the first time, Hai took the lead. She leaned over, softly kissing the nape of his neck. Tuan froze. 1 second. 2 seconds. Then, he asked with total sobriety. Too full to sleep? Ellipsis. Hai stiffened. It felt as if she had gathered every ounce of courage. Only to have a bucket of cold water thrown right in her face. She turned her back to him. Go to sleep. Silence. A moment later, Tuan pulled her back. His voice dropped. If you want something, just say it. You already know. Why ask? I want to hear it. Hai stayed quiet. Then she lowered her head, speaking so softly it was almost inaudible. I miss you. Tuan stopped laughing. This time, he didn't tease. He only pulled her closer. I'm right here. God help me. Hai muttered, her voice both annoyed and helpless. My husband is truly beyond help. Tuan stood nearby, catching fragments of her words, and burst out laughing. If the computer is broken, it has to be fixed. It's not broken. Then be clear. I thought you were giving me a green light. Ellipsis. Hai turned her face away. She knew. Arguing further was useless. The years that followed passed very quickly. They still bickered. Over tiny things. But every time, Tuan was the one to back down first. Not because he was wrong, but because he didn't want to win. Night fell. He still held her the same way. Wife. Yes? I love you. You're talking nonsense again. I'm addicted to you. Hai shuddered. Stop saying those things. He laughed. Said no more. Only held her tighter. Duong was 7 years old. Tuan was 44. Hai was 25. A family that looked very normal from the outside. But inside, everything had changed long ago. He still cooked. Still picked up the child. Still stayed home more than she did. And Hai was no longer the girl who used to avoid him. She was more proactive, understood him better, and loved him in her own way. One night, after the child fell asleep, Tuan lay still, his voice slowing down. Mom and Dad want to take Nguyen over there for a while. Hai didn't answer immediately. She looked at the ceiling. Let the child decide, honey. I'm afraid you'll be sad. Sad, surely. But I'll get used to it. That night, Hai didn't sleep. She turned her back to him, clearly hearing every breath of the man lying behind her. He didn't push. Didn't ask more. Just silence. The next morning, she went to the pharmacy on her own. She said nothing to him. 2 months after the child left, the house felt emptier. Fewer laughs. Fewer running footsteps. One afternoon, Hai held a test strip in her hand. 2 lines. Clear. She sat for a long time. Didn't cry. Didn't smile. Just watched. That night, Tuan had just finished showering. Hai embraced him from behind. She held the object out in front of him. Your birthday present. Tuan froze. 1 second. 2 seconds. Is it real? Hai nodded. He said no more. He only held her tightly, as if afraid that letting go would make her vanish. I get to be a father again. His voice broke. This time, everything was gentler. No more panic. No more clumsiness. Only familiarity. And a touch of gratitude. A baby girl was born. He named her Hai Duong. At home, they called her Bong. Years passed. Bong turned 5. The house was once again filled with laughter. There were afternoons when Hai would stand in the kitchen, watching Tuan struggle with the 2 children. One running. One crying. He would turn around and smile. Wife, save me. Hai didn't rush. She stood there a moment longer, looking closely. This man had once been the thing she feared most. And now, he was the place she never wanted to leave. I read to the very end, and it doesn't feel like an ending. It feels like a house at midnight. The lights are out, but the kitchen still smells of rice. The balcony still holds the breeze. And in the room, there are still 2 people who aren't asleep. Hai lay on her side, her hand resting on her belly, where another life had just begun. She said nothing. Tuan lay behind her. He said nothing either. Only, his hand rested upon hers. Not squeezing. Not pulling back. Just placed there. Like a habit. There are years when people love each other with words. But by this point, they love each other through things much smaller. A touch. A breath. A silence that needs no explanation. Hai remembered herself at 18. She once thought her life was just a trade. A contract. A nod, because there were no other choices. She never thought she would have a child. Then 2. Then, a man. Who, every time she turned around, was still there. Tuan spoke softly, very quietly. Asleep yet? Hai didn't turn back. Not yet. A pause. He continued. I'm old, but I'm still greedy. Hai smiled faintly. Not the kind of smile from teasing, but the kind that knew the other person was being real. Greedy for what? Greedy for you. The sentence sounded so familiar it was almost funny. But for some reason, that night, Hai didn't argue back. She only said softly, I'm not going anywhere. Tuan didn't answer right away. A moment later, he gently pulled her hand closer. Not forcefully. Just enough for her to know. He still needed her. Outside, the city was still bright. Cars still ran. People still laughed. But in that room, there are 2 people who have walked through nearly all the noise of life and have begun to grow used to the peace found in each other. They aren't always sweet. They still argue. They still bicker. There are still days when Hai wants to banish him to the sofa. There are still moments when Tuan plays dumb, to the point where she wants to hit him into his senses. But the strange thing is, no one leaves. Perhaps their love did not have a beautiful beginning, but it grew in a way that was very real. Not perfect. Not by the book. Unlike anyone else. It is just that. Each morning upon waking up, they still see the other person there. And each night before sleep, they still want to turn back and reach for a single touch. That night, Hai was the first to close her eyes. Tuan stayed awake for a while longer. He looked at the ceiling, then looked down at the person lying in his arms. Exhaling softly, no one said anything more. But there was one thing that no longer needed to be spoken. That house had become a home, not because it was complete, but because someone still chose to stay.